Masechet Pesachim, page 112. We are continuing to speak about various items that are bad for a person. Some of them have to do with demons, but of course, this is the way of saying in ancient times that something is dangerous. And I'm sure a lot of this advice actually did help people stay away from ill effects of dangerous places and dangerous things. So even if the explanations are not quite scientific, some of the advice is actually helpful. So we begin with Dimsochad ve'lam yadeh mifchit shiv'a yomeh. Someone who lets blood and does not wash his hands is going to feel anxiety for 7 days and not know why he feels it, but you have to wash the hands after that. Someone who cuts his hair and does not wash his hands also will be afraid for 3 days and feel anxiety. Someone who cuts his nails and doesn't wash his hands will be afraid for just 1 day and feel anxiety. And then, so just regarding that, basically, when one does all these things, that what they all have in common is you're taking away something from some part of the body, blood, hair, or nails, and for some reason that makes one susceptible to demons being there, and then on one's hands, and so you got to wash them to take away that bad spirit. Otherwise, it will affect the person with anxiety. So that's the idea. Okay, so the truth is that nowadays we know that washing hands is probably one of the most important parts of staying healthy and not catching diseases. And the fact that the halacha says that we wash our hands before we eat, and all kinds of other situations, actually probably was something that very, very much did help with hygiene at a time when people did not automatically wash their hands on a regular basis. Okay, yada usya darga lefahada. If someone is placing their hand, near their nose like this, that shows that they are anxious. Yeda aputa darga l'shinta. But if they place their hand on their head, that shows that they're on their way to fall asleep and they're tired. Tana ochalinu mashkin tachat hamita afilu mechopin bechle barzel ruach ra shora alehen. Someone stores food and drink under the bed, even if they're in an iron vessel, nevertheless, the evil spirit will rest on them. Suppose when someone's sleeping is kind of we call it a 60th of death. So it's kind of some kind of tum'ah will go on the food. So that's not a good place to store food. One should not drink just plain water on Tuesday nights or Friday nights. That's when the demons are most available. We'll see the reason at the end of the daf today why those 2 nights in particular. But they like to hang around water, so other drinks are okay. If he did drink it, then he deserves danger to bring him the danger. His blood is on his own head for bringing himself into danger. It's the danger of an evil spirit. What if a person is thirsty and he wants to drink? What should he do? Well, he can say the following: Nema shiva kolot shamar David alamayim ve'adan lishtesh nemar kol Adonai alamayim ela kavod im Adonai mayim rabim kol bekoach kol behadar kol shaber hazim v'shaber Adonai tazeh al banon kol Adonai choseb lahapot esh kol Adonai chimidbar yicham midbar kadesh kol yichol adot ve'chesof yarot u'bechalo kolo omer kabod. So since in this Mizmor 29 it says kol 7 times, and they have to do with water al hamayim, so you see that if we and say this Mizmor, and that will work as an incantation to say, God protects the water and the demons will then fly away. Rambam would have a problem with this by taking pisukim that are meant for holiness and inspiration and using them as an incantation. Something else we learned from the 7 times it says kol in this Mizmor is the 7 berachot that we say on Friday, on Shabbat. In the Amidah. So there are other things that we learn from this. It's very beautiful Mizmor. Okay. Ve'ila nemahachi lul shafan anigron anirdafin ben kochabe yatebna ben beli'i shemene azelna. And if he doesn't know those pisukim by heart, then he can remember the following incantation. He names some demons and says, I'm between the stars, I walk between thin and fat people. In other words, go find someone else to pick on and leave me alone. Vila ika inish behade nit areh velemale pelanya bar pelanya sachena maya vehadar nishte. There's someone else that's nearby. Let's see, wakes up in the middle of the night. He wants to drink, so he goes to his roommate, wakes him up, and say, "Listen, right?" And calls him by name and says, "I am thirsty," and then he can drink. The idea is that demons like to only attack people that are alone, but if there's someone else around, then they'll be afraid. Vila mekarkesh nachtema achasba vehadar nishte. And if there's no one else around and he doesn't know any of those incantations, then knock the cover and then drink. By knocking and making noise, sounds like there's someone else there, and then the demons will go away. Otherwise, no cover even. Just throw something into the water, and that'll make a splash and send them away, and then he can drink. Do not drink from rivers and ponds at night. Right, at night, that when demons are around and they like to hang around water. Maybe it has to do with something, bacteria actually do like dark and damp places, slime molds, viruses, things like that. They do grow fungi. And if someone does drink, then their blood is on their heads because they put themselves in danger. What kind of danger? That of blindness. And what if he's thirsty and he's out and wants to drink from a pond? If he's someone else around him, then he says his name, the son of says his mother's name, and he says, "I'm thirsty." So okay, he announces that there's someone else around, and the demons won't bother him. And if no one else around, so he says, "Listen, this person he names his mother, said to me, beware of Shavrireh." That's the demon of blindness. And then you repeat the name Shavrireh, but you take away one syllable at a time. Then you just say, you take away the shin, Birireh, you take away the first the bet, and then you go smaller and smaller. The idea is by reducing the name to just one syllable and nothing, so too the power of that demon should be reduced to nothing. All right, now we go back all the way back to the Mishnah. We get back to a little halacha, but don't worry, there's going to be more agada coming up soon. And the Mishnah said that everyone has to have 4 cups of wine on during the seder, even a poor person. And that even if that means they have to take from the charity plate. The tamchoi was something that was especially for very needy people who didn't have enough money to buy a daily meal, and they would be fed from the tamchoi. So even though it's for emergency needs, for basic food needs, nevertheless, the 4 kosot of wine is a luxury, but it's a luxury that everyone has to have on Pesach. So we say pishita. Isn't that obvious? All right, that everyone has to have this mitzvah. And so therefore we have to provide it for everyone. So what's the teaching us? Oh, so it's going to teach us that even Rabbi Akiva would agree. Why? Rabbi Akiva said that in general on Shabbat you're supposed to have 3 meals, right? But if someone is poor, then they should have only 2 meals. There are two regular meals, even if they're pretty plain meals, rather than go and depend on the community to provide for 3 meals and to provide for extra luxurious meals. In other words, although it is a mitzvah to have 3 luxurious meals on Shabbat, but if someone is poor, then they do not take from the community funds for this mitzvah. However, that's true for Shabbat all year round. But for this mitzvah, for kosot, even Rabbi Akiva would agree that the community needs to contribute to having this luxury of 4 cups of wine, because this is a special mitzvah. You want to publicize the miracle, and therefore you want to make sure that everybody is involved in it. Tana debe Eliyahu. אף על פי שאמר רבי עקיבא, עשה שבתך חול ואל תצטרך לבריות, אבל עושה הוא דבר מועט בתוך ביתו. Okay, so we learned in this from the school of Eliyahu, taught that even though Rabbi Akiva said this, that you don't rely on the community to get an extra meal, but even a poor person should do something, right? Make a small dish, do something a little bit nice. Bring out, you have one dish that's a little nicer than the others. do something for Shabbat to make it special. What is that? For example, Rav Papa says Rav himself was wealthy, but he's saying, give an example of a small fried fish, right? So it's cheap, but it's something that will nevertheless make Shabbat special. Kiditna Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema Omer, Have'az kanamer v'kalkaneh she'v'ras kasebi v'gibor kari la'asot reson abicha shebashamayim. As we quotes the famous Mishnah, we should be bold like a leopard and light like an eagle or like a vulture, and run like a deer and strong like a lion to perform the will of our Father in heaven. The point is, we should always go the extra mile and be very zealous in keeping a mitzvah, and therefore even someone who is needy should find some way to do something extra to make Shabbat special, even without depending on the community. Okay, now that we mentioned Rabbi Akiva here and the advice he says, we're going to mention the larger context, and this is advice that he gave to his son, Rabbi Yoshua. 7 things Rabbi Akiva told his son. Beni, al tesheb begob ha shel ir v'tishne. So when you're learning, don't go up to the high point of the city and study there, because a lot of people passing by, and then they're going to come and ask you questions and talk to you and distract you from your learning. So even though maybe it's a nice place and a nice view, it's not conducive to study. This is surprising. Don't live in a city where the leaders are Torah scholars. Well, you think that would be good if the leaders are Torah scholars, but no. Why? Well, maybe because since they're Torah scholars, they're busy with their study and they're not governing the city correctly. So the best sages and scholars might not make the best politicians, taking care of cleaning up the snow and stuff. Also, because if you live there, then, when there's an opening, they might call upon you to go and go into politics. And then that will distract you from study Torah. So therefore, there's better to be a separation between religion and state. Don't barge into your house immediately without announcement. And all the more so into someone else's house. I mean, people need privacy, and you're going to barge into them, and maybe they're in the they're going to be embarrassed, and so better to announce, knock on the door first, and then come in, even into your own house. And do not walk barefoot. Always have shoes on. It's very disgraceful to walk without shoes. So even if that means, it's expensive and is difficult to afford, one should try to always have shoes. And wake up early and eat a meal every day. It's good to have a good breakfast in the summer because it's hot out, in the winter because it's cold out, and you need that nourishment to withstand the heat and the cold. Here you go. That's why we're quoting this whole thing, because we quoted this already, that better to make Shabbat like a weekday and not have a special meal rather than depend on the community if someone is needy. And if you're going to do business with someone who is successful, someone who has whose stock is going up. Then you'll join him and you'll be successful too. Okay, on that, and for the last thing, he didn't mean that to buy from him or sell to him, because if his stock is going up and you're buying or selling, then he's going to get the better end of the deal. So then that won't be good for you. But rather, what Rabbi Akiva meant is, rather he meant to make a partnership with him, right? If you're partners with him and his stock is going up, then you will also benefit. Based on this, we can understand the pasuk in Iyov that says this is when Satan comes to Hashem and says, what's so special about Iyov? You blessed everything that he does. You blessed the works of his hand. What does that mean? It means that anyone who takes a peruta, who takes some money from him, is blessed in that transaction. Even if they're the ones buying from him or selling to him, right? He benefits and the other person benefits. So that's what was so good about him. This reminds me of the dollars that the Lubavitcher Rebbe would give out, right? Anyone who gets one of those feels blessed. So that's like Yov. So he's even better than someone who's just has good luck. He gives good luck not only to partners, but even to people he's making other transactions with. חמישה דברים ציווה רבי עקיבא את רבי שמעון בן יוחאי כשהיה חבוש בבית האסורים. Okay, we mentioned now Rabbi Akiva what he told his son, and now that he's 7 things. Now here's another 5 items that Rabbi Akiva taught to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai when Rabbi Akiva was in prison. Rabbi Akiva was in prison because he was one of the revolutionaries against the Romans during the Bar Kokhba revolt, and there was decrees not to do any Jewish practice and not to teach Torah law. And Rabbi Akiva said, "What? To not teach Torah law? That's our life." So he taught in any case against the Roman decree and was put in prison. Amar lo Rabbi lamedeni Torah. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai comes to visit him in prison and says, "Rabbi, teach me Torah." Amar ani melamedcha. Rabbi Akiva says, "No, I'm not teaching you." Right? Rabbi Akiva did not want to put Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in danger. They're in prison. There's guards there. They're going to see. Then they're going to arrest Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai also. Rabbi Akiva could put himself in danger, but he doesn't want to put Rabbi Shimon in danger too. Amar lo im en ata melamedeni ani omed leYochai abba mosercha lamalchut. So Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai threatens Rabbi Akiva, his teacher, with these amazing verses. If you don't teach me Torah, I'm going to go to Yochai, my father, and he's going to tell on you to the government. He's going to be a moser. And then, Rabbi Akiva is already in jail, but it means that he'll get even worse charges against him. And, maybe they'll give even worse punishment. All right, now I assume he doesn't mean that he's really going to do that. He's not going to put his rabbi in danger, in even more danger than he's already in. But the point is, he's saying, I really want to learn Torah, and I understand the consequences, and I still want you to teach me. Akiva says, trust me. It's not because I don't want to teach. He gives an example of that the calf wants to suckle from its mother even more than the calf wants to suckle. The mother, the cow, wants to give milk, right? Because it's painful for the cow if its udder is full. And so I'm the teacher. I want to give you Torah even more than you want to learn. Trust me, right? It's not because I don't want to, but it's too dangerous. Amalo Omi besakana, and then Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai continues on that metaphor and says, "Yeah, but who's going to be in danger, right? Isn't it the calf? Alo egel besakana. It's the calf. If he doesn't get milk to drink, will starve. The mother will have pain, but it's much worse for the calf." And so Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, "I am the calf. You're withholding Torah from me." So I know it's painful for you, but it's really dangerous for me not to have Torah. So teach me anyway. Okay, after all that negotiation, Rabbi Akiva says, fine, I'll teach you some things. Amar lo im bikashta lehanek hitale beilan gadol. If you want to strangle yourself, use a tall tree. Okay, this probably has a more than one layer of meaning. It could be referring to this with the conversation itself. He says, you wanna. There's a play on words, lehanek and lehanik. Right, lehanik to suckle, and lechanek to strangle yourself sound the same. So this point is, if you want to put yourself in this mortal danger and learn Torah, and at this time, then at least go out with a bang. Do it in a big way, a tall tree, and show an example that you are doing this and being a martyr, and that will inspire the rest of the Jewish people, as Rabbi Akiva actually did himself. So that's one meaning. But another meaning is, if you're going to deal with if you're going to put your neck out, in other words, involve yourself in difficult situations like life or death cases or difficult legal cases, then you should always rely on a tall tree. In other words, go find the opinion of a great sage, and don't just assume that you know everything yourself, but find a strong precedent for your rulings. Very interesting. When you teach your son Torah, Tanakh, you should use a corrected text, right? They had manuscripts of the Torah, scrolls, parchment scrolls of Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, and when you're teaching your kid, they were different. They're of different quality. Some parchments were corrected and to make sure that there were no mistakes in it. But other ones were written by scribes who were not so good, and they had lots of mistakes in it. So there's not so many books around, scrolls around. So everything is used. But this is when you're teaching kids, make sure to use the best scrolls. Don't say, oh, they're just kids. Why? Because when someone's learning something new and children are learning something for the first time, then once a mistake enters the mind, it stays there. The first time you learn something, you remember that. And so you want to make sure that the kids learn the correct text the first time. If it's an adult already and it was already been through this that parasha many times, and then if there's a mistake in there, he'll remember, oh wait, I think there's a mistake, and it won't get stuck in his mind. Okay, so you see that it's very interesting that they had different texts and they knew, oh, this one is a good one, this one is not so good. Next thing Rabbi Akiva teaches his student Bishimon Bar Yochai is, don't cook in a pot in which someone else already cooked his food. All right, this is all a euphemism to mean don't be with a woman that someone else was already with. If someone was married to a woman and then she was divorced, then someone else, you should not go and marry that woman. Basically saying, don't marry a divorcee. Obviously in halacha, unless one's a kohen, one's allowed to marry a divorcee. But nevertheless, he's giving advice to stay away. Why? When a divorced man marries a divorced woman, there are 4 people in the bed. Not actual people. There are 4 minds in the bed, right? Each one's thinking about his previous spouse and the current spouse. And so it's hard to start off a relationship on a clean slate in that way, right? So obviously it's permitted. We should note that the Dead Sea sect and Christians did not allow divorce and did not allow someone to remarry after divorce. So Rabbi Akiva is not going that far, but you might find some resonance of that opinion here in what he's saying. And some say one should not even marry a widow. This would apply only to a Kohen Gadol and for halacha, but he's saying just as advice not to do so because the fingers are not all of equal size. He's using fingers as a euphemism for the male member to say that this woman, since she was with another man, she might be comparing and with her new husband, and therefore the best formula is for unmarried people to marry for the first time, and if possible. Mitzvah veguf gadol ochel perot velo sachar. Another piece of instruction Bekibat Torah Shimon Bar Yochai is that there's a way to do a mitzvah and also benefit one's body, oneself at the same time. How can you do something that's both a mitzvah and you get personal benefit? Well, if you lend money and you take land as collateral, this was a common thing to do. You basically lease someone's land. The person that owns the land, they get a sum of money up front. And so, if they're down and out, they need that money. So that's very good for them. And let's say there's a 10-year lease. And so now the person who lent the money, he can use that land, and anything that grows on the land, he benefits, he takes from. So this is a win-win situation. The person that lends the money gets to reap the benefit, reap the fruit of the land, and that benefits him personally. He has a gain for 10 years. And the person who was needy, he not only gets a lump sum at the beginning, but also holds on to his land, so that 10 years later, then he might be back on his feet and can keep the land for himself. So this is a way of helping someone, giving a loan, helping someone in business, a lease, is a good way of both making a mitzvah and making money. Mitzvah veguf tahor nosei isha velo banim. Another way to do a mitzvah and to keep your body pure is to marry someone. That way, all of his passions and energy is towards his wife, and he will have children also with her, and that way he can keep his thoughts pure always. Since we finished with Rabbi Akiva, but now that we mentioned other advice, we mentioned advice that other sages gave to their children. So Rabbeinu HaKadosh, in other words, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, commanded his sons regarding 4 things. Al tadur b'Shechanziv. Don't live in this city of Shechanziv that was in Bavel. Mishum de lesanehavu umashku lach belesanuta, because the people there are all jokesters, they're mockers, and if you live there, then they're gonna influence you, and you're gonna become someone who become a clown also. And don't sit on the bed of an Aramean woman. Well, what does that mean? Several explanations. Some say it means don't go to sleep without saying Shema. That's talking about bed. It's your bed. But if you don't say Shema, then you're going to sleep like without acknowledging your Jewish identity. And therefore, that would be your bed would be called an Aramean bed. By saying Shema, now you made your bed Kadosh. And so you said, see, I'm Jewish, and now it's not an Aramean bed. Some say it means don't marry a convert, someone who was Aramean and became Jewish, but still an Aramean bed. Why? I mean, conversion is allowed. Boaz, many great people in history married converts. So what's wrong with it? Some say that marrying a convert, you have to be extra careful. You know, if you say something insulting, then you shouldn't insult anybody, but especially a convert is even more so. So because of that high bar of difficulty of making sure to treat her completely properly and never say anything out of line. So maybe that was his advice, or there's other explanations too. Okay, anyway, maybe he's saying an actual Aram, don't sit on a bed that actually belongs to an Aramean woman. It is not proper. And it cites a story. It doesn't bring the whole story here, but the story once happened that Rav Papa, he lent money to an Aramean woman, and then he went to go collect. And one time when he went to collect, she framed him, and she said, come here, come and sit on the bed. And she had a baby that died and put the baby under the bed. And when he sat on it, she says, see, you killed my baby. And then he got in trouble. So therefore, this is talking about some time period when the relations between the Jews and non-Jews was not good, and therefore could not be trusted. Okay, don't run away from paying taxes, right? Pay your taxes. Because you might get found out that you tried to avoid paying taxes, and then they're going to give you a fine and take everything you have. Okay, that's one reason to pay taxes, but also another reason is because it's proper to pay taxes. But they're talking about a time when the tax collectors were actually just extortionists, because they would take extra and keep it for themselves. So, and then that kind of case, it was not a moral obligation to give taxes, but a practical one. Min hagam mipnei she'asatan meraked ben karanav. Okay, very good advice. Don't stand in front of an ox when it comes out of the marsh, because the Satan dances in its horns, meaning it's extra energized when at that time, and so you don't want to be in front of it when it's energized. It might gore you. Amar Rabbi Shimon b'shor shachor u'biyomed Nisan. Rabbi Shimon says specifically a black ox, which may be referring to a buffalo, a water buffalo. Maybe that's why it's coming out of the water. And specifically during the Nisan, during spring, that's when it's most dangerous. But other times of the year, well, I still wouldn't stand in front of it, but apparently it's less dangerous. Tanei Rav Oshaya, medachikin mishor tam 50 amma, mishor moad kimelo aynav. You should stay away from a tame ox, an ox that has no history of goring anybody. Nevertheless, stay 50 amot away, about 75 feet, and an ox that has a history of goring, stay away as far as you can see. Tanami shemed Rabbi Meir, resh Torah bedikula sak leigra ushte darga mitutach. All right, more good advice. Even if the head of an ox is in its food basket, right? It's eating from its trough and it's not looking around at anything. Nevertheless, if you see it, run up to the roof and kick out the ladder from under you to get away, because it might wake up and see you. So that's definitely good advice. Not that the ox is going to actually climb up the ladder. It's being a little exaggerating, but in other words, get yourself to a safe place. Amarav nizha de Torah hen hen. The cry to call an ox, you say hen hen, and they listen up, and they do your bidding. Nizha de aryeh zeh zeh. If you want to get the attention of a lion, you say zeh zeh. Nizha de gamla da da. To lead a camel, you say da da. Nizha arba heleni haya hela hiluk v'hulia. In order to drive a ship, all right, to get the rowers to all row in tandem, you should say this formula. I guess this is kind of like a heave ho or row your boat kind of thing. It's some kind of alliteration that will a poem to get everybody to row at the same time. Amar Abaye or dag v'chos chamin ubesim v'chinim lebanim kulan kashin ledavar acher. Okay, Abaye now has some more advice for us. A hide of an animal, fish, a cup, and hot water, and egg, and white lice. These are all dangerous for the other thing, the unspeakable. What is the unspeakable? It's sarat, some kind of skin disease. How so? Or if someone sleeps on a tanner's hide before it's tanned during the process, sleep on it. Well, I don't know all kinds of chemicals they use for that, and someone sleep on it could very well get a skin disease. Dag shibuta b'yomen Nisan. Fish is some kind of certain shibuta fish, is a kosher fish in the days of Nisan, is not good. Kos shiura kasad har sena. This is talking about those small fried fish that we mentioned above, are not good for sarat. Chamin, chamime de chamime meshadero ilave. If someone bathes themselves in very hot water, that's also not good. Sometimes people take showers that are too hot, not good for skin. Besim man de midrach akelipim, and walking on eggshells, I could see that not being good for the skin of your feet. Kinim levanim man de machavad lebushe v'la nater le temanya yomeh v'hadar labushla bariyan hanach kinim v'kashin ledavar acher. So white lice. This is they stay in garments, and so if someone washes their garments but doesn't keep it in storage for 8 days and wears it again within 8 days, that will create lice. The idea is that if there's lice in the garment and washing it, and you want to leave it there, leave it alone for the lice to go away, to die. If you wear it was too soon, then the lice are still there, and that will cause a skin disease. Amar Papa. So more advice from Rav Papa. Beta de'it be shun ralane ol ba inish. If there is a cat in the house, do not walk barefoot in the house. Why? Because the cat kills snakes. And when it eats the snakes, it leaves small bones. And those small bones can go into one's foot if you're wearing barefoot and can't get them out. And that is dangerous. You can't get the bones out, and that will be dangerous. So wear shoes if there's a cat. Another say the opposite, that if there's no cat, then you should not go there. Not the opposite, but another piece of advice regarding cats is that do not go into a house that has no cat if it's dark, because there might be snakes there, and the snake will wrap around him and he won't realize because it's dark. So it's good to have a cat to catch and eat the snakes. All right, people do that today to catch the mice. So now more advice. 3 things that Rabbi Ishmael told Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. And the first one is, don't harm yourself. Okay, that's good advice. Maihi, in what way should you not harm yourself? So don't harm yourself by going into a litigation with three other parties against you, because they will gang up on you. Right? One of them will be the litigant, and the other 2 will act as witnesses. And they'll gang up. I mean, obviously it's not legal, because if they're all involved in the case, they can't be witnesses. But they'll find a way to outsmart you. There's 3 against 1. So not a good idea. And also, don't stand near a display of something for sale when you have no money and you have no intention to actually buy it, because they're just getting the hopes up of the store owner or confusing other shoppers. So therefore, no window shopping if you don't even have money on you. Ishtecha tabla al tizdakek la laila harishona. And this third piece of advice is that when the night when a woman goes to the mikveh after she's nida, man should not be with her that night. Wait till the next day. Why? Okay, this does not apply today, but applied in those days. In those days, the difference between nida and zava. And nida just has to wait 7 days from the beginning of the first time she sees blood. The zava has to wait 7 clean days. In other words, 7 days after she stops seeing blood. So nowadays women treat every period like a zava and wait 7 clean days. But if you didn't do that in those days, when they did just 7 days altogether, she might actually be bleeding even on the 7th day, and then she goes to the mikveh. And how do you know that she actually is going to stop bleeding? Maybe she's going to continue, and she will become a zava. Right after the 7 days, any blood she sees is now causes her to be a zava. So you want to wait 1 day after she goes to the mikveh to make sure, in fact, that the bleeding has stopped, and then so the nida period is finished and she's not zava. So that's a good precaution. We don't have to take that precaution now because we take an even bigger precaution of the woman being afraid that maybe she was zava to begin with, and therefore waiting 7 days without blood at all. שלושה דברים, ציווה רבי יוסף ורבי יהודה את רבי, אל תעשה יחידי בלילה. Okay, another 3 items that Rabbi Yosef told Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and he said, do not walk alone at night. Okay, good advice even for today. In those days, they might have been afraid, well, not only of demons, but also robbers, bad people, muggers. Okay, so even we don't do that today, even though we have streetlights and cell phones. So all the more so in those days, it would be dangerous. Don't stand naked before a candle. Some kind of bad luck with there. And don't go into a new bathhouse because the floor might collapse. What is it talking about? Here's where bathhouses worked. People would, there would be hot water. There was a fire and hot water that was pumped underneath the floor. The floor was raised and held by these short pillars. And the people would walk and sit above that, and so the floor would be hot. This is like, the first type of radiant heat that nowadays everybody has in their new homes. This would create steam and warm floors. So this is very good and luxurious. The problem is that these pillars, they didn't have great building materials, and sometimes the floor would cave in. And especially there's hot water and fire under there. So don't be the first one to go to a bathhouse. Let some other people go, wait a while, see if it's really sturdy. So these things were difficult to build. So that's his second piece of advice. Third piece of advice. Now, how long should you wait before going to a new bathhouse? Wait a whole year. That's a good idea. It goes through all the seasons. Sometimes things contract and expand based on the winter and summer. So went through a whole year and it's safe, then it's okay to go. If someone stands naked before a candle, will become epileptic. Maybe something to do with the way the candle shakes and the flame shakes. I don't know. Also, someone who has relations with his wife before in front of a candle, as their children will be epileptic. Okay. I mean, there's other reasons, to just in terms of modesty and privacy, to be in the dark. But this is adding another reason. Someone who has relations with their spouse when there is a baby on the bed, then that baby will become epileptic. Maybe also more to do with like shaking. That's only if it's less than a year old. If If it's a year old, then it's okay. I guess it's old enough to be stable. I mean, it is actually bad to shake children, especially young children. They could cause brain damage and things. So maybe they had that experience. And only for the baby sleeping at the person's feet. But not if it's at the person's head, then that's okay. I guess near the head of the bed is a safer spot, won't fall off or anything, less shaky. That's only if the person's not put his hand on him. But if you put your hand on the baby and keep it steady, then also it's not a problem. Regarding that which we said, do not go out alone at night. We have a braita. Lo yesech yidi balayla lo belerabiyot v'lo beleshabbatot minei she'agrat bat mahalat hi u'shmone esrei ribo shemalachecha bala yosin v'chol echad ve'echad yesh lo reshut lechabel bifnei atzmo. Okay, the reason why you should not go out, that applies only to Tuesday night and Friday night. Why? Because then there's this demon, her name is Agrat bat mahalat, the daughter of sickness, and she has 18 times 10,000 other angels of destruction that go out, and each one of them has permission to destroy whatever it wants. So that sounds like it's really dangerous. Now, why those 2 days? Well, originally it used to be that the demons were out every night. However, one time the demons came to attack Rabbi Yochanan ben Dosa, a great sage, one of the greatest of his generation. And Amra le ilav de machrizan alach berakia izaru b'chanina b'torato sakintich. However, as they were about to attack him, there was an announcement from heaven saying, be careful from Chanina and his Torah, because they right. So if not, so then the demon said, left him alone. He says, but if not for the heavenly voice, you would have been in grave danger. He was able to pull out his support the demons card, and so because of his great merit, he was saved from the demons. But otherwise, he would have been in danger. So now Rabbi Chanina realizes, see, up in heaven, I have such influence, I have such power that I'm protected from demons. Well, you know what? I'm going to use it now, and not only for my defense, but also to go on the attack. Le'olam, I make a decree that you may not come into inhabited areas ever. Right? You can stay out in the forest, out in the field, but you can't come into the cities and bother people. But then the demon said, I'm sorry, please, leave us a little space. We need to come in. We need to get some things here. We need to come into the city sometimes, right? So leave us a little opening. So, okay, Rabbi Chanina felt bad for the demon and said, says, okay, fine. You can come into the city, but only 2 nights in a week, on Friday night and Tuesday night. Why those 2 nights? Well, Friday night, people aren't traveling. They're home having their Shabbat meal. So if the demons are out, I'm not going to bother too many people. So that's a good night to pick. And Tuesday night is also good because usually people would come into the city on Mondays and Thursdays. That's when they read Sefer Torah. Those were market days. And so that means they'd be traveling in on Sunday, staying Monday and leaving Monday later. And also on Thursday, they'd coming Wednesday and traveling till Thursday, and leaving later on Thursday or Friday morning. But Tuesday night, there were not a lot of people traveling, and so since they were not busy traffic days, so he says, okay, you can demons, you can have those 2 days. But that's not the end of the story. One time the demons came to try to attack Abaye. Maybe he was alone. Same story. The demons were about to attack him, and then the demon said, I can't attack you, but if not for the heavenly decree that said, be careful, watch out, don't bother Nachmani. But Nachmani is the name for Abaye. He was an orphan, but he was brought up and by his teacher, by his teacher Rabbah, so he's called Nachmani. So I said, be careful from him. And if not that you were a great sage and in heaven they gave you protection, you would have been in danger. Amar la. So the Abaye realized, oh, look, see, I'm so important. I have such influence in heaven. You know what? I'm going to take the offense. I'm going to take the attack and turn it against you offensively. And Abaye says, I make a decree against you, demon, that you cannot come into the city ever, right? And that way you won't bother anybody. Okay, so that's the end of the story, and so therefore demons should not be allowed to come into the city ever on any night after that story. But now we have a question on the story, but now we see there are demons here. People do get attacked when they walk alone at night in the city. So what happened? Amri hane gazyata ninhu deshamti susaya vatu dabri lehu. No, these demons that are found on the paths. This word gazyata might be from Arabic or a side alley. This is the problem is that the horses that belong to them, the horses ran away, and the demons have to come to get their horses. But they're not, they just came to get something, but they're not actually coming and staying in the inhabited places. So in fact, there used to be a lot more demons around in the olden days, and now even that was reduced to Tuesday and Friday night. And even on those days, they really don't come except if they have to get a runaway horse. And so we don't have to worry about the demons quite as much as they did in the olden days. So we started with demonology. We went into some halacha, but that led to agadah of a lot of advice that the various rabbis gave to each other, and we returned back to a little bit more about demons. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'amen.